Hello, this is Coach Wilson, and this is Unit 2, Day 3. Today's journal will be talking about how did the British acts or taxes and the Boston Massacre contribute to the revolutionary spirit of the colonists. All right, we're going to kind of continue rolling into the Revolutionary War. Now, our essential questions for the day are what were the major causes of the American Revolution and what were the different perspectives regarding the Revolution in the 1770s. Now, the Boston Tea Party in 1773 may be one of the most well-known events of the American Revolution. December 17th, the Sons of Liberty organized a protest on the tea tax, and essentially England had put into place the Townshend Act, and it was taxing all of their tea, and people were very upset about it. And what it was trying to really do was force the colonists to buy English tea and to push profits through England rather than other countries who they may be importing tea from. The Sons of Liberty were very upset and attacked an English tea ship and dumped 342 chests in the Boston Harbor. This would have been the equivalent of about $4 million today, $32,000 worth in their time. So they did some major property damage. Now, they did try to dress up as Native Americans to make it look like the Native Americans had done it, but I don't think anybody bought that really for a second, because as a result, the next year, King George is going to institute the Intolerable Acts, as they're known in the colonies, or the Coercive Acts is what they were known in England. And these acts were passed to punish the citizens of Boston Harbor for the Tea Party. And they closed Boston Harbor, instituted martial law where the soldiers were in control of the city and occupying the city, and they said that you had to quarter soldiers, which meant that if a soldier wanted to stay in your home, you had to let them, and you had to feed them and take care of them. And that was all part of the Quartering Act. So those three little things I noted there at the bottom are all parts of the Coercive Acts. Like, they are the acts that were passed by the British government, which are known collectively as the Coercive or Intolerable Acts. Okay? Now, here's a look at our quote-unquote Native Americans attacking the British tea ship. Obviously, we know that was not the truth. Now, because of the Intolerable Acts, later that year, they're going to come together and they're going to meet. And when I say they, I mean the colonists. And 12 colonies are going to send roughly 55 representatives, minus Georgia, to Philadelphia, where they are going to talk about protesting the Intolerable Acts, how they should proceed as a country. And as they come together and begin to talk, they realize that maybe we should not declare independence. Okay, we need to figure out our issues with England, because England is our home. That's our countrymen. We need to work it out with them first. So they come up with this idea of issuing the Declaration of Rights and Grievances. And these rights and grievances were things that they felt like that they needed in order for them to feel safe with the English government, and how they felt like they were being unfairly treated. England completely ignores it, acts like it doesn't exist. They look at the colonists as they should just do what we say because they're our people, not they have their own rights and they're their own country. However, when the First Continental Congress does leave and they go their own separate ways, they do agree before they leave to reconvene and come back together if the problems are not solved with England in a certain period of time. Patrick Henry is also noted as saying, "I know not what course others may take, but as for me, give me liberty or give me death." And Patrick Henry is very famous in that statement that he would rather have the liberty that he deserves, that is his right, than to continue serving under this English government. Now, one thing I want you to continue to remember, think about back when we were talking about in Unit 1 with enlightenment, and we were talking about that idea of natural law, that there's natural rights that are given, and John Locke and some of those things that he advocated for. That is very much what Patrick Henry is kind of quoting here, and that's really going to be kind of the basis that this American independence starts to form. Now, you had two sides here, like you do in all wars. You had the Loyalists and you had the Patriots. Okay, the Loyalists, they were also known as the Tories. They supported the British, and they were government officials, ministers, plantation owners, those who had the highest stake in England continuing to rule over the colonies. The Patriots, This was your farmers, your merchants, your planters, those that really affected by the taxes, that felt like they were being, pointed out by the British or targeted. And this is going to be your New England and Virginia areas, kind of that part of the world. Now, we come to the actual beginning of the Revolution, and what happens is the British are already in America. I think one of the things that I've never, and it always hits me every year when I teach this, that I've had this epiphany before. I never realized, I think when I was studying history, that the British they're here. Like, the troops are already in the country, but that's why when the colonists began to think that they were going to fight back against the British, they had to worry if it was by land or by sea that they were going to attack. And so what happens is they began amassing an armory. They began getting weapons together at Lexington and Concord. And this is Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts. Okay, make sure you're not thinking this is Lexington and Concord, North Carolina. Because if you look down here on the map, there's Boston. Okay, that's in Massachusetts. Now, Paul Revere is going to make his famous ride, and you've heard the saying, one if by land, two if by sea. Okay, there were two lanterns. Paul Revere sees the two lanterns in the Old North Church, takes off on his famous ride, saying the British are coming. And what he was doing was alerting these Minutemen. And these Minutemen were men who were in the colony who would arrive at a minute's notice, quote unquote, and fight against the British if they needed to. And what happens is these Minutemen show up, and this becomes the first battle of the Revolutionary War. It is worth noting that Samuel Prescott, another colonist, actually continues Paul Revere's ride because Paul Revere is captured, and he continues on to warn of the British attack. Now, it's called the shot heard round the world, this battle is, because everyone in the world took note of Britain's colonies fighting back against them and the fact that they were successful. And it's going to spark change in the whole world if you really look at it. The Second Continental Congress is going to form not long after that, so we have that in 1775. I'd have to get you a date to say exactly the time span between. But in the same year, the Continental Congress meets again, and they select George Washington. If you remember French and Indian War, talked about him gaining fame. Well, here's going to be fame gained even further. George Washington's going to command the entire Continental Army, and he's going to also, along with the Congress, issue what is called an olive branch petition to try to reconcile the differences with George III. Unfortunately, the die has been cast, and George III is going to completely wipe these people off the face of the earth, if at all possible, and retake what he considers his kingdom. There's also an idea proposed here at the Continental Congress of independence, but it will be another year before they will finally put that in writing. So, Thomas Paine puts out a pamphlet around this time trying to promote the Declaration of Independence or a declaration of some sort. He attacks King George in his writings of common sense and basically said that monarchies take power away from the people, and he's going to try to push the colonists towards more independence. That was the idea that Thomas Paine had. It's a huge influence on the Declaration of Independence because it's once again pushing those same Enlightenment ideas of natural rights and that a king cannot take these rights away from you, nor should a king have the power over his people, but the people don't have their own rights to vote. Now, they write the Declaration of Independence on July 4, 1776, and it's signed and written into law by Thomas Jefferson as well as 55 other delegates. And it essentially took from all of these ideas of people have the right to govern themselves, and that the people who are in charge only rule with the consent of the governed. So the people who they govern, they make choices whether you can do something or not. You don't just do something just because you have all power, like a king or a dictator. It also said that people should allow the government to rule, pick the rulers, and the document is going to be the justification needed for the revolution against Britain. So here is the Declaration of Independence. Obviously can't read it real well, but you can see those who signed it. And then here are your 4 questions for the day. Please make sure you answer all 4 of these questions, and please let me know if you have any questions whatsoever about the notes or the information. And then here are your 4 vocabulary words. If you don't have any questions, please let me know. If you do have a question, please let me know in an email. Otherwise, I will talk to you soon.